My name is Tyler Smith, and I'm running for Texas House District 138. I love Progress Texas because Progress Texas speaks to everyday Democrats in the state of Texas. If you're ready to get in the fight, if you're ready to fix our healthcare system in the state of Texas, join me and Progress Texas to turn Texas blue and take the fight to Greg Abbott.
It's Tuesday, March 24th, 2026, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier, and here at Progress Texas, we have built a statewide audience. We reach millions of Texans monthly, and that's thanks to folks like you who invest in independent progressive media by Texans and for Texans. Our thanks to Julianne Reeves, Sean Hayward, and Laura Wildenthal for their ongoing sustaining support. Good morning, everybody. Our Tuesday begins with a gigantic explosion and plumes of burning petrochemicals towering over the town of Port Arthur, Texas. There was a shelter-in-place warning for the townsfolk for a few hours. Luckily, no injuries, and all employees of the Valero Refinery, part of which blew up yesterday, are accounted for in Port Arthur. Petroleum expert, Houston State Rep, and Democratic nominee for Texas Railroad Commission John Rosenthal notes via Twitter that, quote, this important facility processes 435,000 barrels per day to make products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, unquote. Just the kind of issue we need as the world's oil supply has been choked off at the Hormuz Strait by the bumbling of Donald Trump. On that same tip, meant to mention yesterday, a story from Fortune and writer Jason Ma further illuminating the upside-down nature of the Texas energy sector. That same bumbling in Iran by our dear leader has caused troubling natural gas shortages and price spikes in Europe and Asia. But here in Texas, we have such a glut of natural gas that prices are actually negative, and it's mostly being burned off as a nuisance byproduct. Rather than paying someone to take natural gas off their hands and get it to people who need it, it's easier for West Texas oil executives just to burn it. The fact that doing so releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide and methane into our air here in Texas is a complete afterthought, of course, and not really part of the math. Longstanding institutional environmental neglect is central to the issues around water, of course, coming to a head in Corpus Christi lately, as well. As we've told you, the energy sector down there is scrambling mightily to make sure their industrial water supply is uninterrupted. And in that case, what comes out of Corpus Christi kitchen sink taps is the complete afterthought. Colleen de Guzman at the Texas Tribune relays several heartbreaking stories from Corpus residents grappling with a looming existential threat to their city. Existing and escalating water austerity measures already prohibit non-essential outdoor watering and automatic irrigation, bringing to an end local traditions like high school car wash fundraisers, switching off splash pads for the younger kids, and feature urgent requests for residents to use 5-gallon buckets of water for necessary cleaning tasks rather than running taps or hoses. Again, central to the Corpus Christi water crisis is the question about whether people or the energy business should take priority, as 2 of the city's 3 primary reservoirs fall below 10% capacity, forcing Stage 3 drought restrictions. There's well-founded fear that industrial concerns will continue to use their vast financial, legal, and political resources to hoard the bulk of the dwindling water supply, while Corpus residents bear the burden of conservation. Local families and small business owners have already suffered significant disruptions to their daily routines. Mom-and-pop restaurants, for example, now worry that water use restrictions threaten to end their ability to keep up with sanitation and food preparation. The situation's not improving. And should forecasts hold, there may be actual dry taps and thus the possibility of evacuations by the time midsummer rolls around. Again, the Texas Democratic Party convention is scheduled to be held in Corpus Christi this June. A massive media merger with ties to Texas is worth paying attention to, and for those of you who support and patronize independent media sources like Progress Texas, it's even more important to understand why that support is so very important. David Dan at the American Prospect says a coalition of Democratic attorneys general from 8 states, including Colorado, California, and New York, are suing to block the $6.2 billion Nexstar-Tegna merger, which would turn what are already the nation's largest groups of television stations into a gigantic single behemoth, piping content into 80% of American homes. Despite federal rules that are supposed to cap household reach at 39%, this is all the handiwork of FCC Chairman Brendan Carr acting on the orders of his boss, Donald Trump, prompting this action from state AGs of the opposing party. And this is important to Texas, as Nexstar is headquartered in Irving, and the company's so-called consolidation playbook appears poised to gut local newsrooms in just about all of Texas's major and medium media markets to streamline operations and broadcast identical centralized content to all of those viewers. A clear threat to community-specific reporting and a lot of power over what gets covered and how. Nexstar is already known for leveraging its airwaves for partisan interests, and a market share exceeding 50% in many parts of Texas could turn local news into even more of a conservative corporate echo chamber than it already is. Now more than ever, independent, nonprofit media outlets like us here at Progress Texas stand against corporate giants focused on profit, not communities or truth. Your support is an important and easy way to help us hold the line. To immigration, where Micah Rosenthal and Mackenzie Funk at ProPublica report that the number of parents and children held at the notorious ICE detention lockup at Dilley has plummeted by over 75% over the course of the last month, the daily population falling from over 900 at the end of January to approximately 100 today, likely at least partially the result of intense public and congressional pressure driven by the publication of letters and drawings from detained children, which were used in anti-ICE demonstrations and read during congressional hearings, and video from calls from inside the walls going viral. Those calls were mostly choked off by DHS officials last week. Jonah Kruger at Consequence of Sound says that part of that public pressure has come from Rachel Accurso, the popular children's creator known as Ms. Rachel, who has redirected her massive platform to advocate for the closure of the Dilley ICE lockup, starting with her coverage of the detention of 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos and continuing with those viral video calls with detained kids. In an interview with NBC News, Accurso correctly labeled the shameful detention of children in deplorable conditions, including moldy food, constant lighting, and inadequate education as, quote, neglect and child abuse, unquote, rejecting the idea that basic care for children should be a partisan issue. Totally agreed, and we send Ms. Rachel our thanks for her great work. But that's where the good news about Dilley ends. The average length of stay for those still locked up there has consistently exceeded the 20-day limit suggested by the Flores Agreement. The average at Dilley has now risen above 50 days in recent months. As we begin to wrap here, thinking about our family members and loved ones in the smaller Texas towns and rural communities across Texas who have been so hard to connect with on just about anything since Trump 1.0, food for thought from Kevin Sanchez at the San Antonio Current on how, quote, the GOP's professed love of rural Texans is all hat and no cattle, unquote, referring to author David Griscom's book, The Myth of Red Texas, which echoes things we've heard folks like Jim Hightower and current Democratic Ag Commissioner candidate Clayton Tucker say in contradiction to the traditional Texas individualistic cowboy stereotype, which has supplanted the real history of grassroots solidarity in the Lone Star State, using examples like the 19th century fence cutter wars, interracial timber unions, and the Texas Socialist Party, which was the state's second largest party from 1912 to 1914, to argue that populist defiance against arrogant capitalists is a more authentic Texan trait than any loner mythology that Hollywood Westerns or Donald Trump would prefer you believe. That enduring misdirection has set up what Sanchez sees as a metaphorical barbed wire of infrastructure collapse and policy failure across rural Texas. Central to that lately, Trump's big bullshit bill, which is projected to leave 15 million Americans uninsured by 2034 due to bureaucratic hurdles, Trump's ideological purge of research grants, and his complete failure to say a single word about the building rural health crisis in his recent record-long State of the Union speech, while 83 of Texas's remaining 154 rural hospitals are currently hanging on by a thread. A great read and good ammo for your next lunch with your MAGA uncle from Kevin Sanchez at the San Antonio Current. See the link in the show notes this morning. Progress Texas is expanding our top-rated podcast network to include Spanish-speaking media to increase the reach of our progressive messages daily. Click the link in the show notes to make your donation towards Spanish media today. A program note for our Houston peeps: the next episode of our In Progress Roundtable show will be the first in Afternoon Drive on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, coming to you in the middle of a new Thursday afternoon block of progressive political programming. Starting this Thursday, March 26th, In Progress moves from Thursday morning at 10 to 6:30 p.m. every Thursday evening, after the Progressive Forum and before the midterm show with Ernest Wittring. With your support, we hope to expand our radio footprint beyond Houston to the top 5 Texas media markets this year. Click the link in the show notes to make your tax-deductible donation to help us reach new audiences via Texas Radio. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared bold progressive values, and that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. Progress Texas is an independent, nonprofit, rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a terrific day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.